truth shall be your curse. It will follow you for eternity. I will shadow you forever. I will show them what you've done. I will never let you go.
And I'm Noah, and you're listening to a brand new season and a new type of season of A Bite Of,
where we take our current favorite pop culture obsession and enjoy it one nibble at a time.
And we're going to the movies, summer movies.
Let's go to the movies.
We did realize that we don't do a lot of movies on this show, and we claim it's our pop culture obsession, but to be fair, also, just in case anybody's questioning it, there's been a pandemic, so not many movies started coming out.
I mean, we did a very, very, very light take on Twilight at the end of our first season of Midnight Sun. And I mean, we just did the Black Widow movie, so...
Yeah, Black Widow was our guinea pig, for sure.
Yes.
Obviously, we're going to be covering movies that came out this summer in 2021, and there has been quite a few, but we had to cover the R.L. Stine adaptation of Fear Street, the trilogy that came out on Netflix, because if you followed our YouTube videos that we did for a very short period of time, but did a few, we did do a Goosebumps book one.
Yes.
And we have a bunch of Goosebumps. We are big R.L. Stine fans, so we were, of course, very excited. And we had to talk about it. There was people on Twitter that were like, are you going to be covering these movies? And I was like, just wait. I think we might be.
Maybe we will. And I mean, I still have my old Fear Street novels too.
Yeah.
I was a huge R.L. Stine kid when I was younger. And so I read more of the Goosebumps than I did the Fear Streets because I was young, but I just wanted to collect the Fear Streets. And so there were a couple, though, that I really devoured and loved.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So as we kick off this new season, what is this season? Season 8, because it was Loki number 7,
Ooh.
The last one. Yeah. So we're now at season 8, which, I mean, season numbers don't really matter except for organization for ourselves.
Yes,
but
the eternal
if you wanted to
struggle
know
of whether or not to call it a season. It remains.
But make sure you're following us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. That was the last one. At A Bite of Pod. I swear I know what I'm doing half the time. We also have a Patreon where you get exclusive swag, bonus episodes and polls and behind the scenes stuff. But also, if you don't want to do Patreon, Apple subscriptions right there. Get bonus episodes that way because they're going to be posted on there as well. And then lastly, that rating and review on whatever podcast app you're on, they'll let you do it. It lets us know we do a good job. We like hearing from you, and we'll post about it on social media.
We're so grateful. Before we get into the movies, of course, we got to do a little research. So Fear Street, the series, started in 1989. There were over 100 books in the series, and the first one was called The New Girl.
Did he write all of them?
I mean, according to the covers, he wrote all of them.
Oh, okay. A ghost situation.
Yes,
okay,
I do believe there is a bit of a ghost situation happening. But The New Girl, in that one, a guy named Corey falls in love with Anna, but she's mysterious, and they need to figure out what her deal is.
Why?
I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe she's a ghost.
Oh, well, that's rude. Just let her be. They fall in love with somebody. Let them fall in love.
But she's a ghost. What's her deal? I don't know, actually. I've never read it. But I did read. So the thing is that the Fear Street movies that just came out, they're not based on any one book.
Right.
So I decided to read a book in the Fear Street saga. So there's 3 books in this saga, and the first one is called The Betrayal. And the reason I went to this one is because it shares a lot of, like, the family names are the same.
Right.
In this one. So there's the goods and the fears. So I do like that there's this little, like, paragraph that he writes that says, "Welcome to Fear Street, where your worst nightmares live. It's a terrifying place for Shadyside High students. And for you, did you know that the sun never shines on the old mansions of Fear Street? No birds chirp in the Fear Street woods, and at night, eerie moans and howls ring through the tangled trees."
Oh, fun. Okay.
Ookie spooky.
It does. I mean, so Fear Street was geared towards an older audience, aka teenagers, but it very much sounds like Goosebumps in that paragraph.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's all about the ookie spooky chills and thrills. I feel like Goosebumps had more of like things were sort of haunted and, you know, weird people, like a crazy circus came to town and they were beasts. And this one's like murderers.
Oh, yeah.
Like Fear Street was like straight up like murderers. He's going to kill you on your first date, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So what this one does, the betrayal. So there's 3 in the series: the betrayal, the secret, and the burning. So I read the betrayal, and there's 4 different sections of this, or 4 different time frames, I should say. So it starts off in 1900 with Nora Good, and her house is burned down, and she's like, "Why is my family cursed?" And then we learn why her family's cursed.
Oh.
So we go back to 1692 in Massachusetts. There's a man named William Good, and he has a daughter, Susanna Good. She falls in love with Edward Fear, and they want to get married, but she's poor. So his father, Benjamin, says no.
Okay.
So then he frames Susanna and her mother of witchcraft, and then they're burned at the stake.
Because they're less fortunate?
Basically.
Okay.
So Benjamin and his brother Matthew, they're like swindlers.
Mm-hmm.
So they come into these towns and they kind of take them for all their money, and then they run away. Therefore, Edward's love with Susanna would get in the way of that.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you do back in 1692? You holler witch, and they get burned at the stake.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. But the twist is that William, after they're burned at the stake, turns out that he's a witch himself.
Okay, so just like the movies.
Yes.
Almost, right.
So he puts a curse on the Fears, right?
Mm.
So we jump to 1710, 18 years later, and they've all sort of moved on with their lives. They've gone to Western Pennsylvania. They're living on a farm, and we meet a new character, Mary, who's Edward's cousin. So Matthew's had a daughter now. She falls in love with the new farmhand, Jeremy Thorne, right? But we see sort of William creeping in the background. People are falling off roofs. They're getting hurt, yada, yada, yada. Turns out that Jeremy is actually William in disguise.
Gross.
Mary thinks that he's coming to profess his love to her, but really he walks through the door, and Benjamin and Matthew are like, "Demon!" And he's like, "You caught me." And then his head explodes. And then
Jesus.
it literally explodes open. His head cracks. Mary goes crazy. So Edward takes Mary and they run away because they want to make things good between the two families. But they're still cursed. Everybody's cursed. And it also turns out, surprise, surprise, the Fears are also witches of some sort as well.
Oh.
So both
Twist.
sides have magic. Yeah. Then we come to Ezra, who is Edward's little boy in 1725, and he still wants to fight the Goods.
Okay.
So-
Let it go, but it's fine.
Never.
Okay.
Because his father was ruined. His Aunt Mary went crazy. You know, Grandpa Matthew cackled himself to death and put himself in a wall. And then there's just the magic, and he won't let it go.
These spark notes for this book is, I mean, it's just, I'm getting flashes of things that happen. I'm like, he really wanted to put everything in this book.
Yeah. And this is only the first one.
Right.
So then, like, I think in the second one, a Fear and a Good fall in love. And then the last one is when we sort of join Nora again, and she's trying to break the curse. But I think it's too little too late at this point. The Goods and the Fears have cursed Fear Street, and it's all over from there.
I mean, so just on that, light synopsis with the book, it does seem like they pulled from elements from especially that story.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, but I mean, from what you said, I like the changes they made for this, and then adapted it to, I guess, a more serialized movie format.
Yeah. Yeah, and they definitely made some cool changes. I like this. I thought the writing was pretty good, and it sets up the story of being like, oh man, what's going to happen next? Who's going to die next? Whose head's going to pop off next? You never know.
Interesting.
Yeah. But that's the betrayal.
Nice. So read it.
Read it.
I'm sure it's easy to find because it's been out for 150 years. Just about.
Just about. All right. So, of course, we have to say, spoiler alert. We're going to be going through all 3 of the Fear Street movies that were released on Netflix. So, heavy, heavy spoilers coming.
Yeah. And we'll kind of explain why we're doing all 3 in one. But, we could have done them separately. But it kind of just makes sense to talk all about it at once.
There is a beautiful through line, I think, that brings them all together.
Exactly.
So, let us officially take a bite of Fear Street, 1994, 1978, 1666.
Big time jumps. So I come from an entertainment business background. And I love finding out how and why and where and what brought these movies to the screen, because I think a lot of times people don't realize that even before it's announced, it's like been in the works for a while.
Oh, yeah.
Like that Lock and Key show that was on Netflix, which I love the source material, by the way. If you like the show but want something a little more darker, read the comics. That went through like 2 movie adaptations, a failed TV show that they did a pilot for, and then they finally came to Netflix, and now we have to wait like 2 years for the next
You know what's
season.
so crazy about that is that they're filming season 3 right now of Lock and Key, and season 2 hasn't even come out.
Yep. Thanks, pandemic. But the journey to the screen for this film trilogy is super interesting, because originally it was announced in like 2015,
Mm-hmm.
and it was being developed by 20th Century Fox, but Disney acquired it, and then they changed their name to 20th Century Studios. And then in 2017, they hired the screenwriter. Then in July of that year, it was announced as a trilogy of films and not just a film. So like it went through all of these steps to like get to where it was. And it wasn't until in 2019 when they finally announced who the director was, which was Lee Janiak, which I think previously she did Honeymoon, which was also a creepy movie.
Mm.
So perfect person. But in 2019, it started filming in Atlanta. It was wrapped in September 2019, the filming of these 3. And they did it back to back. Like they just shot it as one giant movie.
Yeah. It was like over 100 days, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And it was originally going to be released in theaters. So Netflix did not have the rights for it, even after it was done filming. It's going to be released in theaters in June 2020, thanks pandemic again. But thankfully in April 2020, the entertainment company that was dealing with it had a distribution deal with 20th Century to actually give it to Netflix, and Netflix won that deal. So then by August 2020, Netflix acquired the rights to do it. And initially they were going to release them a month apart, but then they decided to do it like a week after week.
Yeah.
Which I liked.
Yeah, me too.
I thought it was a great move to do.
Because then you didn't have to like, oh, wait, what happened? I feel like a month would have been too long.
I mean, it was cool seeing. So this really feels like an experiment that Netflix is doing, because I don't think we've gotten this before. I know The Old Guard, which is an amazing movie. There's more that are being set up, but we know it's coming. But with this, they knew it was going to be 3 movies, and they were releasing it back to back. So this is a weird, like, movie, TV, streaming hybrid.
Yeah.
Because I think individually, as all 3 of these, they don't stand as a movie. The first one does. The second and third one don't stand as a standalone movie.
The third one definitely doesn't.
Right.
1666 definitely doesn't. You know, one thing I think is interesting about this, just from a personal point of view, is that, like we said, these 3 movies are not tied to one specific book. So it's not like, oh, I'm a fan of the first Percy Jackson, and it's the first Percy Jackson. Like, I was just excited about this because it was Fear Street.
Right.
And I knew nothing about it, but because I have that tie to my childhood, I was like, this is going to be bomb. And I think it was really such an interesting thing to do these 3 sort of, obviously not standalone movies, but they release them separately and give you a full feature-length film with every release.
Yeah, I think what this creative team did right with these movies is they took a general concept from one of the books, or the trilogy of books, and we're like, okay, we'll adapt that, change it a bit to actually tell an original story, but still give that same feeling, and same themes that kind of happened in that.
Yeah.
That's personally, like, I don't need to see a page for page adaptation with stuff like this, because that's kind of boring. I've already read it. I know what's going to happen. I want to be surprised. I want to see new things. And I think that's how you really do it. And I think that with the Percy Jackson movies, they tried to adapt it so much to the book, but then change things.
Right.
And
it was like
well,
not
you can't,
enough.
Yeah, you can't do that. You can't like be like, it's an adaptation, but we're going to go through the entire book. But then this changes, so then that doesn't make sense. So it's an interesting balance they have to do. But they had the opportunity to tell this big, giant story, but in 3 movie formats, if you want to call it that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think just one of the things that completely intrigued me was that you're like, okay, well, they're going to go in chronological order. So we're going to start in 1666 and move forward. No, it's 1994 and it moves backwards to, because you're like, in your mind, you're like, well, how are we going to see the curse come together and then see them defeat the curse? But it takes you on this journey, which I think is cool.
Yeah, I mean, they really could have done it in chronological order, but I think with doing it this way, it was a little more original and kind of cool to see
Agreed.
that.
Yeah.
Because there's always this thing, especially in horror movies when supernatural elements are involved, where the person currently going through whatever is happening, they usually find a person that survived it prior.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get a little bit of exposition on what happened. And then it's like, oh, now I know how to defeat the evil. But in this case, they were like, we're going to show and not tell, which I thought was cool. And that gave them the opportunity to extend it.
Yeah.
Do I feel like it may have, like, I don't know, halted a little bit of like the crescendo that the first one was doing? I think so, a little bit. But I love this cast so much that I was here for it.
And you know what's interesting is that it's also sort of like 3.5 movies.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because in the last one, we kind of come back to what I'm calling the present, but it's really 1994. So they like packed a whole bunch of stuff in there. And I love seeing like the cast who you met in the first 2 films come back together in the third film and get to come all together.
Yeah, so how did you feel about that? Do you think that was just like more of a production saving, or was it a stylistic choice?
I really thought it was more of a stylistic choice. I don't know. It's weird. I think a lot about, maybe because I dabbled in theater as a college student, and there's like a family that's built when you're creating a project, right? So I was like, wow. So they have this first set of cast, and then they have a second cast, and then there's going to be a third cast. But what was cool is that all the main players from 94 and 78 got to come together in 66.
Yeah, that was really cool. And I mean, if you more or less think about it, really the only characters that stayed themselves as those characters was the main protagonist, which was Dina.
Right.
And Sam was there, but she was possessed for like the 2 movies that followed.
Yeah.
So really Dina was herself the entire time. Even when she was Sarah Fear in the past,
right,
we were seeing her and not Sarah.
And because their stories sort of mirror each other.
Exactly.
Right, what they're going through as teenagers, just in, different centuries.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so I mean, starting with 1994, and, general thoughts aside, the Fear Street Part 1 opens with a great homage to Scream.
Oh, totally.
The very, like, meta Wes Craven 1996 slasher. And I knew immediately, I was like, okay, this is on the level of what Stranger Things did with nostalgia, where it did it right. It was like, you got that soft neons, it was in a mall, but it didn't seem forced. You know what I mean? Like, Scary Movie was able to play homage to so many, but make it corny and make it slapstick, and you expected that. But I feel like some movies try to play homage or be like, this is kind of like a remake of Halloween. And it's like, no, this is just a terrible movie that you're making an excuse for. This, I like that they played homage to some of the, big themes in horror. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I like it. And as far as it being in 1994, especially opening in a mall, I mean, a place like Spencer's Gifts, everybody knows Spencer's Gifts. There's a blacklight poster there. And she ends up there, the character played by Maya Hawke, Heather, who is basically our Drew Barrymore from Scream.
Exactly.
Right? That opening death scene, that opening murder.
You knew she was going to get murdered as soon, because you didn't see her in the trailers. I'm like, no. Oh, okay.
No. And of course, it's also nice, because we're fans of Stranger Things, and we're seeing our Stranger Things folks pop up in this as well. And you're like, Maya Hawke, I love her. She was so good in Stranger Things.
Mm-hmm.
Even in that when she dies, it's basically the scene from Scream.
Oh yeah,
right?
exactly.
The slow motion getting stabbed from behind.
Yeah.
It is the Drew Barrymore thing, and not to mention that the murderer is also a cloaked, masked murderer.
Isn't it called Skullface? Right? They don't want to call it like
Ghostface.
Obviously, yeah. Skullface.
Skullface.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I thought it was really cool, and it is nice to see these Stranger Things actors being in more things. We've seen Millie Bobby Brown in a few other things, but Sadie Sink, I fell in love with her in the last
Max.
Yeah, the last season, but I felt like she didn't really get her moment in the show, really. Yeah. And this one really showed that she's going to be somebody that we need to watch out for.
100%.
100%. I was really happy to see her in the next one.
I think a lot of these actors that are in these Fear Street movies are pretty fantastic.
Yeah, I think Dina, this was like her first big movie.
She carried, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like she was the main character.
Right.
I would at least two of them.
Mm-hmm.
Really incredible. And I mean, we'll get into it later, but in 1666 they got to play around with brogues and stuff like that, which was sort of fun.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I agree. I thought Dina was so good. And I personally just sort of love that like rasp that she has in her voice.
Yeah.
So I was like all about it.
Yeah.
I was like, give me all the Dina.
I do. The first one to me in 1994 felt it was nonstop.
Mhm.
You know, you got to see, there was a scene in the beginning with Dina where you see her writing a letter to the ex. And this is one of the themes in this entire thing that I do want to talk about for a minute, that the sexuality identity
Mhm.
in this, it plays on preconceived notions, I feel like, with what you expect, because we see her writing that letter to an ex named Sam, which is a
Mhm.
very gender neutral name. And I think just even, somebody in the LGBTQ community, I expected it to be a guy because we're so used to it. But by the time we get to that candlelight vigil for Heather at the school where Sunnyside and, what is it? Sunnyvale? What's the guy?
Shadyside and Sunnyvale. I had to write it down.
Nightwing. What?
Camp Nightwing.
Yeah.
Added a third place.
But when they come together, one of the coolest things about this is when Dina scans the crowd and lands on that football player and cheerleader, the guy's face is in focus, and it has the cheerleader kind of like a profile. Like you're not really noticing. It's like, oh, that must be Sam. No.
Psych!
Sam is the cheerleader, which I thought was cool. It's not necessarily a bait and switch, but that's what I kind of mean. It's playing on preconceived notions. It's like you don't know. Like,
Right.
Let it play out.
Absolutely. I completely loved that there was this strong LGBT relationship at the center of this entire thing, because I don't think we've really gotten that much, especially in horror movies.
No, exactly. The co-writer for this, Phil, I'm going to butcher this name, Graziadei, I believe, is openly gay. So, and I do think that matters because it showed in this. This wasn't like, I felt like this, something that we always go through is like the bury your gaze thing,
Mhm.
especially in horror. It always happens. I felt like this elevated it to where it was like, no, they're not going to be the ones that are the victims or die. It's going to be their messed up, possibly heterosexual friends.
Yeah.
That are going to meet the meat grinder.
Yeah, we get to be the heroes for once, and I'm using the collective we for LGBTQ people. It's a great thing to see.
Exactly.
I really like it. And also just talking about preconceived notions, one of the cool things about this is Dina and her brother Josh, and looking at them, it's like, okay, well, maybe they're from a mixed family. You don't really know the family makeup. And it was weird just talking about preconceived notions, right? Like, so it's like, well, Dina must be pining over a guy. And then in my head, it was like, well, how are they related? Who were their parents? And it's like, why? It's like we're so pre-programmed to have to try and figure out the puzzle of a family instead of just accepting that they're a family.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at a lot of families around the world, and especially in the United States, they look like that.
Absolutely.
I mean, but it's what we always see in media,
Mhm.
and that's why this kind of representation matters. Seeing different types of family mixes, seeing different type of relationships, and the cool thing about their family dynamic is we know that their dad is MIA. We don't really know about the mom. We kind of find out a little bit later, but it's like a Peanuts situation, like Charlie Brown,
Mhm.
where it's like the parents are there somewhere. They're just, it's all focused on the kids,
Yes.
which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah. And even if you're looking at sort of the tropes within 1994, even looking at Dina's best friend, Kate,
Mm-hmm.
right? So she's a cheerleader. So you're like, oh, she's popular, she's pristine, she's perfect. Well, actually, she's a drug dealer as well. You know what I mean? So they're really playing with tropes. They're really playing with characterization and like taking it and then flipping it on its head.
Yeah, most of the people that are in Sunnyvale are, I feel like this show, what used to be Union, that split into the two,
Mhm.
Shadyside and Sunnyvale, they really, it's like a cafeteria room split.
Mm.
It's like you have all the oddballs and the misfits that are in Shadyside, and then you have all the popular people and the preps and the jocks on the other side. And that's how they do it, which It's very tropey, it's very clicky, but it works. And when you find out why that happened, it does make sense.
Yeah.
On like one side is prospering and the other side isn't. But the whole reoccurring theme with this, and especially that conversation that we get at the candlelight visual with Sam and Dina, where Sam moved to Sunnyvale because their parents got the opportunity, and you know she's living this better life of, you know, she has more entitlement being
Right.
there, and Dina is very much like, well, you moved there, and you know we can't be together. You're there, and now you have a boyfriend, whatever. But a running theme in this is not only because of the curse, but what these people just believe that happens in Shadyside. Dina feels that. She's like, whatever, you know, of course everything's going to suck. We're going to be stuck here. We're going to be this. And it carries throughout the entire trilogy of the movie. It's always dealing with like, how do you deal with something where everybody there is either like isolated, they're not given the better opportunities, it's in, you know, despair and stuff like that. And when we see later in the second movie, I really feel like Cindy/Ziggy encompasses all of those. Isolated, they're a hermit, they don't have really anything going on.
Yeah.
They're impoverished, you know, so I feel like that theme running through it and not having it be like, this is about gay people. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
It's like, it's interesting, right? It's like, it's almost like, is it a commentary on like redlining communities and putting a certain group of people here and another group of people there? You know what I mean? It's like on one side of the tracks is the wealthy, and on the other side of the tracks are the people who are cursed or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like they're playing with so many themes here, but I don't think it's that heavy-handed as I'm making it. But I just think it works well for the plot of our movie.
Yeah, I think they handled it with much more nuance than being, you know, because they easily could have just put, you know, all the people of color in Shadyside and all of, you know, the white people or the more, you know, entitled or have, you know, better opportunities on the other side, which on the other side they typically were white.
Yeah.
So that was there, but in Shadyside you had a bunch of different type of people. So I feel like it was just more trying to play on all those preconceived notions on what you think would happen or where you think something should be set up, and it didn't turn out that way.
Right.
And speaking of, this movie was real bloody.
Oh,
I don't know why I didn't expect it to be as gory as it was, but I was happy.
Yeah.
Because I was like, if it didn't have that, I think there would be something very much missing.
I feel like in 94, they were like, I guess in Scream, there were a couple of weird deaths, right? In Scream, the Natasha Lyonne character gets garage doored.
Yeah.
Or whatever, right? But
which I always thought I know what you did last summer. I don't know why I always think it's
that's
that
where I
movie.
was going. I was like, well, these seem more like actually more like Final Destination deaths. You know,
but with somebody literally putting you in that bread slicer.
Right, exactly. That was probably the most gruesome one that I had to close my eyes.
Yeah.
Bread sliced.
You know, for some reason, okay, I can handle that. It doesn't really gross me out, which I know sounds weird. It's the stabbing. Stabbing always gets me. I don't know why. Even if it's just like a little, like, have you ever seen Pay It Forward? I'm sorry to bring up such a sad movie. But I can't watch the ending of that movie. Because not only because the movie's
like
sad.
the worst ending ever.
Right. But it's just like that one, it's so quick and that's it. You're done. I'm like, oh.
So fragile.
It freaks me out, man.
Yeah.
So that first death with Heather, I was like, oh God.
Yeah. Well, I also want to know about, like, I don't know about old school machinery. I'm sure old school machinery was a lot stronger. But if someone's skull went into a bread slicer, would it not break down?
I mean, it had quite a few blades.
I mean, yes, for slices of bread.
Okay, so I feel like that might have been
a wheat.
Like, machinery probably was like that, and that's probably why we don't have it now. Because I don't see bakeries using that. You know what I mean? Like,
let's
it was perfectly sized for a body.
True. I mean, like the big climactic scene of 1994 takes place at a supermarket.
Right.
And what this taught me is that a supermarket is a death trap.
Right.
Watch out for the lobster tank, allergic to shellfish, or drowning.
Right.
Either
by your girlfriend.
Gotta kill her. I mean, we're really we're leaving parts out here, but I guess you'll watch it and figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, The deaths and the horror, I feel like, weren't cheap in the first one or the second one or the third one. I felt like it was a little bit organic with it. You had some creepy who's in the shadows. You had some like the killer's literally running after you, run type of stuff. And then you had all that supernatural element. So I really feel like it did do a good job of encompassing what I would expect from an R.L. Stine story, which is terrifying kids running away from something and death.
Yeah, pretty much. You know, I have to say on another level, I'm happy that it wasn't a straight adaptation because nothing can capture the magic of the cover art of the original Fear Street novels. You know, like just the popped collars and like the preppy fear. I mean, you just can't get that back.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to say the posters for this movie are pretty badass.
Oh, yeah.
They're great. So plot.
Yes. Well, speaking of those posters, on those posters, you see a lot of figures
Right
there. And in 1994, it opens with the Maya Hawke scene of her getting killed, and the sheriff kills the killer, but then the killer comes back to life and continues killing.
Exactly.
And so that's sort of the mystery of like, how is this guy, you know, this kid still killing everybody when he was dead already?
Exactly. Yeah.
So they do some digging around. They figure out that, yes, there is a curse. There's some bones on the side of the road. Sam touches it. That's how she gets demonized.
Yeah, it's more, I guess, just touching it, really. I think, like, you know, people are already, like, passively cursed being in Shadyside, or the people are doing that to themselves because they think that they're all cursed because they're in Shadyside. But that's how it starts with her.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it just happened to be going on around them, and then wrong place, wrong time.
Totally.
Gets cursed.
And our younger brother, Josh, he's sort of a Shadyside detective. So he's part of an online community. He's putting it all together. He's got the Always Sunny in Philadelphia board with the newspaper clippings. He's got push pins. And he's come to realize that every, 50 years or so?
Give or take.
There's like a mass serial killer.
Right.
And it's like this one person that nobody ever suspected, but they murder. So there was a teenage girl in the 50s, and she had a switchblade, and she would cut people's throats. And there was another kid who bashed everyone's heads in.
Yeah, I don't
bats.
like him. Don't like him.
He has a weird head.
No, he has doesn't he have like a pipe, or is it a metal bat?
I thought it was a bat, but I'm really looking mainly at the giant, like not even mask. He has like a helmet face,
doll face thing, kid face.
Yeah, and then there's Axie McGee, who we learn more about in the next film.
He's probably one of the more terrifying ones for me because you can't see the face, and also Axe is very a blunt, choppy object.
I mean, most deaths in this trilogy happen by the axe.
By the axe, yeah, by just blunt
chopping heads off, smashing chests open. It's crazy. So they come to realize that the only way to save Sam is they have to kill her and then bring her back to life.
Right.
And they do that, and they think they have ended all their troubles, but unfortunately it does not work.
I like how, in this final act of the first one, they use the drug dealing friends to be like, oh, I got you. I work at the supermarket. I know where all the pills are.
Oh, yeah. They first try and get her to take all these pills. That doesn't work. And then she's got to drown her in the lobster tank.
Which, I mean, you can't, force somebody to, OD in a sequence.
Apparently.
You know what I mean?
No. Kate, your resident cheerleader drug dealer, she knows the exact amount of pills.
And timing.
2 minutes, 1 minute, 58 seconds. That you have to take them in order for the OD to happen.
Right, but also come back.
Right, exactly. Right. She's dabbled a lot.
Yeah, and I think they kind of shoo this plot point away by saying oh, this person's brother or sibling did the same thing. So it's I know what they took. It's a little interesting, but I think with this movie, especially when there's supernatural elements involved with horror movies, you have to give a little bit of leeway because there are interesting choices in this. Like when, Sam gets drowned in the tank by Dina, they hit her with 17 adrenaline, EpiPens right in the chest. And I'm like, I've been EpiPenned before, and that shit will wake you up with just one.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think you're totally right. Because there's even plot points that I'm thinking about, that I'm still struggling with. I'm like, okay, well, Sam touched the bones, and then she got a demon in her. But why? Like, just touching the bones makes you get a demon in you?
Well, I think that was explained at the end when it was like the curse that the goods put on the thing was, oh, somebody found the bones.
Oh.
Activate the killers.
Gotcha.
You
Okay,
know?
okay.
You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
Yeah. I'm with you now. Okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I it wasn't explained right away.
I mean, also, we need to kind of take a step back. There's like this like weird like sexy scene that happens like right before there's like this whole thing that happens in the high school, and they're gonna like blow up the school, and they're like, we're gonna do it, but then they all kind of go off to get changed or something.
Oh,
And so
yeah,
like
yeah.
Dina and Sam have a moment, and then Kate and the younger brother Josh have a moment, and then Simon like
Has a moment with himself.
pleasures himself.
Maybe it was just like they're like, well, we might die, so might as well get one last thing in.
Yeah.
Which I kind of did feel bad for the younger brother because I think he did actually like her.
Oh
because
yeah,
was
he totally
fawning
did. He had
over
a
her.
crush. Yeah.
Yeah, and then she ends up getting bread sliced in the face.
Dope.
So with also cake on her face, not a pretty way to
Oh
go.
my
out.
God, they said carbs are no. They lead to death.
I don't agree with that, but that's fine.
That's what the movie told me. So once everything is said and done and Sam has not been released from the demon's grip, they realize that one person has survived one of these like masked serial killer moments.
hmm
And it's C. Berman, who is the hermit that Noah mentioned before. So they know that they need her help. And that's what leads us into 1978.
Yeah, the cool thing about this, and we know that there was going to be two more, but watching the first one, I was like, oh, maybe the next one is, we saw it was going to take place in a camp with different people.
Mhm.
Maybe it's just going to be different stories going down because we knew also 1666. So, but then when you find out, it's like, oh, it's not over, and she's just
Right.
like evil deading her way into the like in the bathroom and still trying to
Yes.
kill Dina. I was like, okay, so when we eventually get to Britta from Community,
That's right. What happened to Britta? It wasn't good.
she went to Shadyside, and it was
Yeah.
not great.
No, she got cursed.
But so in what was it, 1978? In the second movie, again, they decided to show and not tell, and we find out what happened to C. Berman
Right.
and where that curse, because it's more of like, go find the mentor that can help you defeat it, and they were the last living ones really from the last time it happened, so kind of makes sense that she was there. So after not really wanting to help, we find out the story, and that's what takes us to Camp Nightwing, where Sadie Sink is.
Yay. And 1978 is totally Jason, Friday the 13th,
100%. Yep.
Camp Crystal Lake. It's like mass murderer, big guy going around chopping campers' heads off.
hmm
There's some sexy stuff. There's drugs. It's just like totally drenched in the blood of Friday the 13th.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did like this one a lot because it was very predictable in a lot of some of the beats that were happening. It's like kids, murder, where are the grown-ups? Nobody cares, apparently.
Yeah, no, there are literally no adult counselors at this camp.
Except for the nurse that tried to kill the boyfriend,
Okay.
which maybe let her. Because he does end
It
up
would have been
yeah.
better. It would have been better for
But
everyone.
But even after that, that was the thing that, like, kind of after the nurse tried to kill him and then she gets taken away and, like, some parents were called, it's like, I guess parents don't care.
No.
They,
The nurse went crazy. Too late. The kids are at Camp Nightwing. I'm having a
just left
party.
him. Yeah, they just left him,
And
which
Camp,
is funny.
Camp Nightwing itself is sort of at the center of these two towns. So even at camp, there isn't just like a unified Camp Nightwing. It's still like the Sunnies versus the Shadies.
Yeah, which comes into part with the color war that they do.
Which I mean is just playing into this horrible bigotry between the two towns.
Oh,
Why?
yeah.
Why would they do this?
Yeah, they have like the hippie leader for the other one, and she's like, everybody's going to do great. And then the Sunnyvale guy is like, we're going to defeat them because they suck.
Yeah. So that's Will Good. And
Yeah.
he's like the mayor, like the current mayor in 1994 of the town. So
Mhm.
we're like, can't trust him either. But our main stars are Ziggy, who's Sadie Sink, and Cindy, an actor named Emily Rudd. And they're our two sisters.
Right.
They're the Bermans. And Emily, sorry, that's the actress's name. Sorry. So Cindy is like the goody two shoes, right? And Ziggy is sort of a badass. And we learn throughout the movie that they come from a home that's a hot mess. One of them is trying to get away from what they are, and the other one is sort of accepted it and just like, look, We're
all
fuck ups.
cursed. Yeah, we're all cursed. Yeah, welcome to the suck.
This is what we're dealing with.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily call Cindy a goody two shoes. Only because, like, I think again, it's like playing on those preconceived notions that, like, she's just trying to do what she thinks is like, okay, maybe if I act like a Sunnyvale person or like get the popped collar polo and stuff like that, then maybe I'll be able to get out of here. But I think in the back of her mind, she's always believed her sister a little bit that, like, Shadyside is cursed.
You're right. She's just trying her hardest to get away from the thing she's destined to be.
Yeah, and we find out with her friend, her crazy drug dealing using friend Alice, that she wasn't always good, but she was a snitch.
And Alice talks like this. She's like, like, Cindy, you're the worst.
I do think that the actress was great in that role, but her character really annoyed the shit out of me. I just want to say.
Yeah, it was like, it was, you know, we're talking about sort of like these tropes being flipped on their heads, but like she really was sort of a trope and like didn't get flipped on her head. She was like a badass and she had sex and did drugs.
Yeah, she's like 14 and she knows all the types of pill numbers and is just having sex in the broad daylight, and friend walks in and she's like, hey.
What they don't tell you is that she's actually a pharmacist in training.
Yeah.
So she knows it.
Yeah, highly doubt it. a personal pharmacist, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I think the more we sit with that character and when we find out later that, you know, she too isn't just like carefree and stuff like that, she has her own demons, I thought that gave a little more depth to the character.
Yeah.
But I feel like it was a little late in the game because, you know, we sit with a lot of these characters and of course we don't have the same actors that are, you know, Dina and Sam and stuff like that in this one. So it's a bunch of new people and we're supposed to care about them. But by the time I kind of am supposed to care about Alice, she's dead.
No. Dead. Impacted fracture.
Yeah.
Bone through the leg. It was too much.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree. I think this one out of the three, you know, felt, I don't know, because it's not attached to the main arc of the story, it's like a subset of the main arc, it feels a little detached. And I feel like some of the characters felt that way too. I agree with that.
Right. We do see them eventually, you know, they're in the 1994 one and we see everybody pretty much come back for the 1666 one. But in the 1978, I'm trying to like remember these dates. We see that this sheriff from the first one is also here, but he's a little younger. Mm-hmm. And he gets this little attachment with Ziggy, which I do want to point out. Ziggy is played by Sadie Sink, and she's a redhead. And my cat is named Ziggy, and she's an orange tabby. So, I mean, no relation, but I really did feel very attached to that character because of that.
And they're both like little scrappy personalities.
Oh, yeah. They're very picky on the people that they like.
Yes, this is very true. Ziggy has just started warming up to me. I'm feeling blessed, but comes just a little at a time.
But a big part of this one is we're seeing how it started with Ziggy and C. Berman and all of that, this curse, how it came back again. And it turns out that the nurse was trying to kill Tommy because she saw his name on the stones that were down in the witch cave, witch cavern, witch mark place, whatever. And that's the same names as all the other killers. So she knows that it's going to happen because her daughter's name was also on there, and she ended up murdering 8 of her friends.
Yeah, her daughter is it's not her name, but I call her Susie Switchblade. But she's the one that sings. But basically, the nurse has dedicated her life to figuring out why her daughter went crazy and did this, because that's just not who her daughter was.
But now people think she's crazy because she tried to kill a teenager.
Meanwhile, she was just trying to stop the madness. Mm-hmm. See, if we would just sit down and talk to each other, we could avoid things like this.
Pretty much the only adult involved in this should have listened to
Yeah. I was thinking about it, the scene when she tries to kill Tommy. First of all, Cindy's in the room. Wait until hey, Sin, can you go get me some ace bandages from the cabin over there? She leaves, then you kill him. Yeah. It's too much. Or you sneak up behind him.
She was going to kill a teenager. I don't think she was really thinking it all the way through.
I don't know. I just think her madness got in the way. She did not do what she had to do well because she was too crazy.
All right. So aside from playing on the stereotypical kids at camp getting murdered, the main point of this, second installment to this movie was find the witch's lair, kind of or cave, witch mark, whatever. of Sarah Fear, in quotes, and show how the curse really was working, where it was. It's still in that split line. That's why it was from Union to those two. And we see Cindy's character. She's really the one going through that, while Ziggy's character is more up there with, what's his name? Nick Good?
Nick Good, yeah.
And trying to survive the killer that's on the loose. I did feel like this one was a little fractured a little bit because you had so many different parties kind of doing different things.
Yeah.
And eventually they do meet up whenever Tommy is the full-fledged, what do we call him? Burlap sack axe killer?
Axel axe.
Yeah. And he's on a murder spree, murdering tiny children in cabins by themselves, which was kind of upsetting. I'm glad they didn't like actually show it.
I did appreciate that.
Because it's a little too much.
Yeah.
But we find out through this and that there is a curse, the witch is real, all this stuff, that it's actually not C. Berman that Britta plays, but it's Ziggy.
Right.
Which I think it was smart casting because I believed it was Cindy the entire time.
I was just like so upset because I love Sadie Sink so much. I was like, I don't want her character to die.
Yeah.
But it really was her. She really is the one that survives.
Yeah, Ziggy, which, okay. I just went at the end of it, after everybody pretty much dies in that camp, and they get the bone and they think that they found it and they were going to stop it from happening.
The hand.
Yeah, the hand. Turns out the grave had moved. They moved the grave,
Mhm.
which is why Sam found it in the first one, because it wasn't where it was supposed to be.
Right.
And they get hacked up. I mean, Cindy is over there getting chopped in the chest with an axe, and then poor Ziggy is just getting stabbed repeatedly. How the hell did she survive?
And it's so sad because like they're reaching towards each other, but they're
Yeah.
just far enough apart. And it was like they finally realized that they only had each other and their family was a mess, but as long as they were together, it was okay, but it was too late.
Yeah, people just need to freaking listen to each other once in a while.
Yeah.
Like, family members aren't typically out to get you. So it's like, they do love you. Just listen to your sister for once.
Let's just be friends.
But that was sad. I thought it was a really cool shot. The whole
Mhm.
slow-mo of them,
Ooh.
Cindy was like, run, go. But then there was
It's
more
too
killers
late, yeah.
coming towards them. And turns out it wasn't enough. But she does survive. But what I'm confused about, and maybe you can explain this to me, is so we know Nick Good at the end of this is pretty much bad. We're like,
Yeah.
okay, he's bad news bears. The
Good
goods
is
are bad.
evil. Yeah.
Exactly. And why did he tell the cop / ambulance person that was C. Berman? Why did he pretty much kill off Ziggy?
I don't know.
Right?
Yeah.
Was that just like a plot thing to throw everybody off?
Yeah, it must have just been for us to be confused. I mean, I was trying to think, is Ziggy short for something? Catherine? Or you know what
In
I
the
mean?
credits, yeah, in the credits it didn't say anything.
Right. Just
Yeah, the short name for Catherine is Ziggy.
excuse me. How do we get to see Berman? You're like, no, it's Conchetta, actually.
Maybe they're both named Cindy.
Maybe.
That's why
Yeah,
she went with
that's
Cindy.
the parents couldn't deal. They're both Cindy. Name her Cindy too.
It's not even short for like Cinderella or anything.
Nope.
It's just Cindy.
And then Ziggy was like, I'm just changing my name to Ziggy. Yeah. I mean, like we see him trying to cover things up, right? So
Right.
maybe he's trying to lead them astray so that when they say, oh, you're C. Berman, she's like, no, I'm really Ziggy. And they're like, she's crazy. It's too late. They won't believe anything she says because
Mhm.
she looks him in the eye and she's like, the witch is real. The curse is real. It's all real. And he's like, okay, see you later.
Yeah.
Because he has to cover up his family's curse.
Which I did think was good because up until this point, I was like, I had a feeling with the last name Good. I'm like, there has to be a play with that.
Mm.
And I didn't read the book that you read, so I didn't know. And it did make me a little sad because I do feel like he connected with Ziggy, but he's just too much of a gross person and he's following in the footsteps of the ancestors since Solomon.
Right. And very much like it's interesting because it feels like a little bit to me like they sort of, from the book that I read, they sort of swapped in a way, like sort of like the greedy family is actually the fears in the book
Mhm.
and they're willing to do anything to get ahead. And that's where sort of Sheriff Good is that he and his brother are willing to do anything to keep their family being prosperous.
Well, that's why Tommy got possessed or marked because Nick went down into the cave and put his name on the wall.
Yeah,
essentially.
exactly.
So that's why that happened. But yeah, it's. I do wish that it was like that Romeo and Juliet thing where it was like I know it's very
Verona.
yeah I do know it's very tropey, but it's like from both sides doing it. But turns out we already have our Romeo and Juliet in Dina and Sam.
That's right.
So
now from two separate sounds,
right,
just like Romeo and Juliet.
Right. So that's really the big part in 1778. We found out
You said 1778.
1776. The America was born. 1978. Jeez Louise. I swear I'm a semi-professional with this guy. But we find out where the location of the hand is. Dina knows where the location of the body is. And that's why Britta's character, Ziggy, wasn't able to stop the curse because the body was moved where it was originally supposed to be. And where is the hanging tree that Sarah Fear was hung on? None other than the mall. It was there the whole time. That's where the hand is buried.
That's right where our first murder of the whole trilogy happened.
It's full circle here.
Let's go in a circle. We made it.
So, in 1666, we actually start in 1994. And Dina and her brother go to get the hand to reunite it with the body. She does that. As she puts the hand on the body, we're transported to 1666, where a bulk of this, I want to say the first half of it takes place, and then the second half takes place back in 1994.
Well, that was one of the big things that I was sort of struggling with because in my mind, you think, okay, 1994, that's when they're going to break the curse. Like just looking at like a usual story, it's like the most modern cast is going to break the curse.
Right.
And I was like, but how are they going to break the curse in the first one? And then we have to still go back to see the origin. So they do break the curse in 1994. They just put it in the latter half of 1666.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, and that's why at the beginning where I was like, this kind of like a hybrid of a movie / TV show, because essentially what they did was had one movie and then had like long episodes afterwards, because you can't watch the third one or anything, which for most trilogies and series, you typically want to start at the beginning, but it just doesn't function like a normal trilogy. There's no like reintroducing these characters and then having, the plot start or what's the antagonist to the protagonist. It's like, no, it's just like one continuous story.
Yeah.
Which watching them back to back, perfection.
Mm-hmm.
But if they were to come out maybe a year after each other, it does not work.
Yeah, and I mean, like, if you wanted to, like, sort of pick and choose which ones to watch, I think 94 and 78 could stand alone, but 1666, you would have no idea what was happening if you just watched it.
Well, 1978 could stand on its own if you didn't have the bookend parts with the 1994 cast in it.
Right.
If it was just what happened at Captain Nightwing and then it ended where it ended, yeah, perfect. But yeah, 1666 was, it can't stand on its own, which is fine. And I think that they hit the format or whatever they were trying to do great. So the buried secret in Shadyside is that Sarah sacrificed herself and falsely confessed witchery to save her lover.
Hannah.
Hannah. I was like, Sam. Nope. It's Sam playing Hannah.
Santa. Yeah.
I do want to say that they could have leaned into the 1666 a little more, because parts of it felt like it was teenagers playing dress up and putting on like an Irish accent.
Yeah.
I thought visually it looked fine. There was just some fine details where I was like, if you watch The Witch, which I felt like it kind of did pull a little bit from that, or just that era, that one you believe 1,000% it takes place in that time period. This one, I was like, it's teenagers in their drama club playing.
So my question for you, though, is that do you think that you would have felt that same way if it was a completely different cast? But do you think your mind was a little...
I think that's why.
Yeah, because
it's
you
the
saw
same
them.
cast.
Yeah,
exactly. And that's kind of why I was asking, do you feel like using the same cast members again was a smart decision? Was it to save money? It was cool to see some of these characters play a slightly different character.
Mm-hmm.
But really, I mean, Dina's character was really good as Sarah Fear, the actress. But I want to say the actor that played Tommy probably changed the most.
Yeah.
Because he was a sweet boyfriend. He was a crazy possessed axe guy, and then he was like the town loon
Yeah.
in this one. And I was like, he has a pretty good overarching differences. Like, I believe him. Some of the other ones, I was like, it's just literally this character
Yeah.
in a different outfit.
I kind of agree. The same for the Sam Hannah mix.
Mhm.
It's basically the same character.
Right.
It's the character that needs to be saved and whatnot. But I thought it was fun. And I liked, I mean, I'm no accent expert, even though I do accents more than anybody on this podcast.
True.
There's two of us.
Yeah.
So, but
You're one half of the podcast, but do 100% of the accents.
Exactly. So I was kind of like, maybe it felt fun to me. Like I was there. I kind of understand what you're saying. I mean, I also feel like because it was like an up and coming town or settlement, shall we say, there was sparsity to the buildings. There was sparsity to the set, quote unquote. So it felt very empty, right?
It could pass for that time.
Yeah.
It definitely could. And I felt like they got the tone right. Like each one felt a little different in tone. The first one was very like dark and neon-y and like who's in the shadows. The second one was very like kind of warm lighting and, campy.
Mm-hmm.
And then this one was very gray.
Yeah, stark.
And like depression-y.
Yeah.
Right?
And Irish.
And plaguey.
Yeah.
Like I call that the plague filter.
Yeah. Everybody was like sweaty and shiny.
Black teeth.
Yeah, I mean, like, but guess what? No AC, no real like indoor plumbing or anything. So of course, you can only look as fresh as your most recently washed garment.
Yeah. So up is down, left is right, and good is evil. Like Derek said, I like the good is evil part. Making the goods into the bad guys and the witch possessions into like devil possessions is neat twist that I think did well, where it was like, you didn't really know. You knew some of the stuff was happening, but it's like, oh, it's not necessarily witch possession. It's the goods made a deal with the devil.
Yeah.
And this is like demon possession.
Yeah.
Like I do want to like there's a difference. Like if a witch was kind of possessing it, it'd be more magical. This one is like just straight up demons are like terrorizing people.
Like sacrificial goats and all that goodness. I will say that this is the only one that has like blatant homophobia in it.
Right.
So that was something that I appreciated about it. 94 was that like it was their relationship. Granted, Sam's mom had a problem with the two of them being together, but like,
well, they still to me it felt like they felt a little closeted. Maybe Dina was like more comfortable being that way, but Sam to like go to Sunnyvale and then her idea of fitting in is like getting a boyfriend.
Yeah.
Like there's definitely some of that going on for sure.
Yeah, but in this one, a part of the reason why people start to notice them is because I saw them in the woods. They were touching each other and kissing or whatever. Yeah. There's also Ralph Bonard in this one. We see a prosthetic boner in the woods.
I was like, Quicksilver was in this.
We've been bonard.
Yeah, there was a prosthetic boner.
Yeah. So, but
what have we watched? I feel like we've watched a few things recently. Sex Education. There's a lot of like, I mean, this might sound weird. I'm glad that's happening because we don't usually see that.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's more like showing the awkwardness of male sexuality.
Yeah.
Than, I feel like women are always put in that, or like, in like quote unquote slutty or provocative situations. And I'm kind of glad there's this like resurgence of like, guys, your boner is funny.
Yeah.
Like, ew.
Yeah. And also like the character who we see it on, like he's being awful. He's trying to, take advantage of the Hannah character, the Sam character, and he gets called out for it. But I don't know. I just like thought like it's like it was like sort of a funny, interesting thing to put in there.
The boner stuck out to you?
Yeah. But I'm here for that. I'm here for that wordplay, Noah.
But 60s. Shut up.
But 60. Sorry.
1666 is 2 TV episodes in one.
Mm-hmm.
You got the 1994 stuff. You got the 1666 stuff. We see people getting like applejacked Or was it called Applejack?
Applejacks?
Remember they were like saying they were sipping on stuff and then taking those hallucinogenic.
Yeah, back in the day before they had text messages and DMs, you had to walk around town and say a little limerick.
Yeah.
And someone would complete the limerick, and then you'd know it was time to get turned in the woods.
It's something like, I dance naked in the moonlight. I don't know. It's something like that.
It was I dancing in September. But the kids get turned in the woods and
yeah. I'm not going to go through the whole plot because the main premise of this is we find out that Sarah Fear was actually wrongfully accused, but took that wrongful accusation to save her lover, which to me, I don't care if people think it's corny or cliche or just kind of meh. I liked it a lot because it was believable.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know these actors' sexuality at all, but they sold me the hell on their relationship.
Oh, I believed it 100%.
Through 3 centuries.
Yeah.
They love each other. They want to be there for each other.
Yeah.
I loved it.
And so Solomon Good is the first good that we know of that starts this whole demonic deal.
And he does a few bait and switches too, or at least like twists with him because it seems like he gets Sarah Fear a little bit. She's not a great like farmer / butcherer / animal raiser or anything like that, but she knows she's different. Everybody says that she's different. I think it's all just because she is a queer person.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like Solomon gets her, but it seems like he fancies her a little bit.
Yeah.
And as he finds out, like, oh, that stuff you were doing with Hannah wasn't just for like drunken fun, is because you actually feel something about her. That's when we start seeing this weird switch with Solomon where he's not really on her side, but he still is. He's like, oh, my door's already open.
Yeah.
I don't know if he wants to like change her or like, oh, it'll be fine.
To me, I think the switch came when she sort of discovered what he was doing.
Oh, well, you
So that's when
literally
he
caught
turned-
him like black hooded handed.
Yeah, that's when he turned on her.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was sort of on the on the outskirts of town, and he wasn't like everyone else, and so they sort of had that kinship there. And it kind of felt like to me, if she were to be betrothed to a man at anybody, she wouldn't mind it being Solomon because he felt different like her.
Right.
As well.
I thought they were going to go that route. Like she was going to be like, okay, let's just get married so people get off my back type of thing. Or maybe he kind of hoped that. But I'm glad it didn't happen because you don't need to marry no man because you love a woman. Just saying.
Truth.
One of the recasting, or the actor playing a different character that I did like was the nurse from 1978 played the witch in 1666. So I thought it was interesting that the character in 1978 wanted to overturn that curse, but she played the witch that gave Solomon the tools to make the curse.
Well, I think
cool.
that she was a witch, but she didn't give Solomon the tools. He killed her and stole it.
Well, no. I'm saying like she provided the tools, not literally
gotcha.
gave it to him.
Gotcha.
But
I thought you said present.
No.
As a bow.
No.
No.
No, he killed her and stole it and then created this whole mess that is not Union anymore, but Sunnyvale and Shadyside.
You know what we forgot to mention? The giant pulsating evil heart that's in the lair.
We're getting there.
Oh my God. Well, they saw it in 78. I was like, what the heck? I was like, all right, I guess so.
It felt very much to me like Nightmare on Elm Street-y / Evil Dead-y. It was like, oh, now we're getting like the gross horror, like not necessarily body horror, but just like
Earth horror.
Earth horror.
Geo horror.
Black ooze horror. I don't know.
Yeah.
Comment below if you know what kind of horror
Hey guys,
that's called.
What is it? Tell us.
One of the, I want to say scenes that I was like, oh, was when we find out that Hannah's father, the priest, was like possessed with whatever was going on and killed all the children in the village by taking out their eyeballs. That was probably one of the like, ooh, scenes. And after that, the plight takes the town and it all goes downhill from there. Sarah's considered a witch. She's on the outs. Hannah gets captured. And that pretty much brings to the provable stake that's a tree, a hanging tree, because they didn't always burn witches. They did hang them as well and throw them in rivers and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
What was it like? If we throw them in the freezing cold river and they survive, they're a witch. If they die, sorry.
Yeah.
But you weren't a witch.
Guys, if you're ever interested in that terrible, awful part of, sadly, a lot of history in the world, definitely research the Salem witch trials in just how they try to prove people were witches.
Mm.
Even on the other side of the world. It's like, some of it is hilarious because it's like, because birds like them?
Yeah.
What?
And
they're giving them bird seed. Why?
And, you know, and like when you're looking at like media and stuff like that, and it sounds like it could have been this way, it's literally one person being like, oh, they're a witch.
Which is exactly what happened here, which I was glad that
enough.
they do. Yeah. I was glad that they did that because it was something as simple as somebody didn't like what they did or what they were doing.
Right.
The easiest thing to be was they're a witch. And the fucked up thing about it was Hannah's mom was right there. Her husband just got killed for killing all of these children in the village. Her mom was right there and just let him do it. They were going to let him hang her. I was like, oh, okay.
She was like, oh, bye, sweetie. You're a witch, though. So
Yeah.
see you never.
Yeah, but they think she's a witch only because she's canoodling with Sarah Fear. It's so bonkers.
Yeah.
And then the added layer to it, aside from them just being women and accused of that, was I love that they loved each other. I was like, yay, witch love. I'm here for it.
Non-really witch love, but real love.
But Sarah was like, oh, okay, I'm going to go get that witch's spell book and I'm going to use...
Yeah.
They think I'm a witch? I'll be a witch.
She's like, yo, you're going to put me to death for something that I'm really not. Well, I'm going to be that thing and I'm going to try and put you to death before you put me to death.
I mean, that's reasonable thinking. It's like, if I know a witch that I can use their power to get me and my lover out of here, they already think I'm a witch. What does it matter? I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Loved it. I was like, I would do the same thing. Also, I would just be a witch just because it's bad.
Yeah.
No animal sacrifices, but everything else.
Oh, the goats, the dog died, please. Every time.
Oh, Major.
I know, right?
Major Tom.
right.
He made 2 occurrences in the
He
movie.
did, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, see, he even had 2 roles.
Mhm.
That dog had a lot.
Yeah.
Had a lot going on. But right before she's going to be hung in the tree, Solomon's the one that's putting the noose around Sarah's neck. And she looks at him. She says, I will spend the rest of my days trying to take down this curse. And, you know, I'll get you, Solomon.
You'll never get rid of me.
Yeah. And so she's sort of, in a way, not that she puts a curse, but she like makes this like death proclamation that then stays in the ground.
Well, the nursery rhyme, whatever you want to call it, that they would say throughout these movies, or even the 1994 kids would say, because it's part of like the town's culture and everything, you know, her grip on the land will be there until hand and body are reunited, or whatever they said. I mean, so it's true. That whole rhyme was true. Whoever made up that rhyme, which I'm assuming is going to be 1666 Kate and Simon.
Yes.
You know, the friends of Sarah.
Right.
They probably made that rhyme to be like, somebody could break this curse if they just follow these
Right.
instructions.
Right. And they're like, we're putting the body here.
Yeah. I mean, it was
Listen.
because when they moved her body and everybody thought it was buried under there,
Right.
it's kind of their fault that it didn't get broken in 1978, but they eventually found it
Yeah.
from the red moss that just grew everywhere that nobody thought was weird.
The red moss of their love. It was their love because Hannah made Sarah the crown.
The crown
of
of the red
moss.
moss.
Right. And so that
Aw.
signifies their love.
Oh.
That
Trying to
also
get back
led them
together.
to the body and the bones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's signs everywhere, guys. You just got to open your eyes just a little bit. So, you know, final thoughts with this. It's like, oh, no, there's more.
Right, because then it goes 1994 part 2
Yeah.
in the middle of 1666.
Yeah. I was like, we're done.
No.
Sarah Fear. I mean, that part's done. So this, to me, was a little clunky. And I thought a little, I don't know, It was a little campy. It was like, let's just set up a bunch of traps in the mall. We're going to use Dina's blood to lure these guys into the mall stores to capture them and then get Nick in there. It was like,
And
it kind of took forever.
it took forever. And also, I thought it was like really bizarre. So you had mentioned there was that character, Martin, who Josh had met at the police station. And he gets like a card from him because he helps him with like a paperclip to escape.
Yeah.
It's like this random character then becomes part of the final curse breaking scene.
It's like we have too much adults in this screen right now.
Right, exactly. We're only used to the teenagers, but it was just like, where did he come from? Like, why did we need that fourth? It was just interesting. to me.
Maybe, and this is probably me overthinking it a little bit, but maybe it was just that Shadyside can rise to the occasion. I mean, this guy is like always being like caught for something or being wrongly accused of something or whatever. And it's like he did end up believing them and tried to help. So I mean, I'm just trying to be
Yeah.
I guess positive with this random character that did show up.
Yeah.
I don't think it was needed, but he did rise to the occasion.
Yes. And also super soakers.
Right.
They're like, don't forget it's the 90s.
Yeah.
Super soakers.
Lots of blacklight being used.
And
I mean,
blood.
I think it was smart and I think it was interesting. Like it was definitely a different take on this is the climax and the ending to this installment of the series.
Mm-hmm.
Where it ends with Dina stabbing Nick in the eye and then breaking the curse. All of the zombie murderers are like
Yeah.
murdering each other because they have Dina/Sam's blood all
on
over them.
Yeah.
Was kind of funny, but then they just poof. And you think it's mostly done. I don't know why they left the demon book down there in the Witch's Mark caverns.
I mean, these questions are just very valid.
Yeah, you think that they live happily ever after, but of course there's a mid-credit stinger scene where a hand swipes the book of the devil incantations,
Mm-hmm.
teasing that the horror isn't over. Before that, we do see that Josh, who lost his own connection to the bread brain slicer,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know call
Kate.
it. Yeah, Kate. That's right. Forgot her name. Finally meets his AOL chat buddy in person. She's the one that signs the cast. It was at Queen Fair and Darkness.
I think it's her. I think she's the one that took the demon book.
Really?
I don't know.
Oh. She was like so tiny.
So what?
I guess Tiny sneaks in, grabs it, runs
Right?
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think, like these movies aren't like profound or anyway,
Mm-hmm.
but this Fear Street trilogy is, I think, admirable and entertaining
Oh, yes.
horror movie
Yeah.
that packed enough like gruesome scares, twists, and
Yeah.
charming performances to just compel people to stay through the entire
Yeah.
thing.
And I think there's things like, like there's huge franchises like Halloween, right? Where like the same murderer, even once we learn their backstory,
Oh
even
my
though we
God.
think they're dead, they keep coming back, I thought it was really cool that this particular trilogy did complete this arc. And if there is, let's say, another instance of Fear Street, it won't be the goods, at least as far as we know. Although I guess the brother, the mayor, is still around. But
I think that's what I'm curious about. Like I obviously did not read all 100 Fear Street books, but assuming that they're like Goosebumps and that they're just different stories and stuff like that,
mm,
I'm curious if it takes place in Shadyside or Sunnyvale or in those areas. I feel like they would have to leave that time period because then it would almost be like, well, where's Dina and
Right,
Sam? Or
right.
like, why are they not noticing this happening again?
and I wonder though if they did flash forward to either present day or maybe like 10 or 15 years later, is Dina sort of the new Ziggy Berman that they have to visit to try and get help?
I hope Dina and Sam are living happily ever
Oh.
after, though.
They better be together or else I'm going to be very upset.
And we can't end talking about this movie. I mean, we like talking about these things. These aren't like our normal formats for the episodes that we do for the seasons. And I gotta ask though, what was your favorite death? I know that sounds weird. And what was the most gruesome death? They could be the same thing if you want, or they could be
Ooh.
separate ones.
Okay, so my most gruesome one is that I don't think I'll ever be over the bread slicer. I think we've learned that through this conversation. It was too much.
Okay.
It was much too much.
Much too much.
Much too much. My favorite. Okay, I'll say for creepiness factor, the kids in the church.
That was pretty creepy.
It was
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like the scene itself was freaky because he had taken his own eyes too.
Yeah, but he's still moving around,
But
freaking
he was-
demon
he was
possessed.
cuckoo crazy.
I think
talking.
it was real. That whole scene, the build up for it, I thought was shot really well. This whole trilogy was shot very well. There were some very cool tricks they did with the camera, but in this one, with it being so quiet and not having like 9 Inch Nails playing or like
Mm, mm,
Radiohead playing, which there's so much good music in this
Yeah.
that like transports you to the time. But in 1666, for a lot of it, it was like a violin score and everything. And so just building on that creepiness and then the silence and then hearing the parents like find their children was pretty.
It was effective.
I think I have to say that's probably the most gruesome one.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say that's my favorite death because R.I.P. little bro.
I'm not saying I'm happy. It's not my favorite because the kids died. It's my favorite in the production of it.
Sure.
Because it was, oh, you're the one that was happy to see the boner. Okay. So that was your most gruesome one. What was your favorite one?
Ooh. I think favorite one as far as like, I saw it coming. What was Alice's boyfriend's name? Do you remember?
I don't.
Anyway, him getting his face like hacked
Oh, yeah.
with the axe by Tommy, like right when he like officially turned into the axe killer or whatever guy. That one I was just like, whoa.
And you know what? The thing with the axe is like, sometimes it was a clean head chop.
Oh yeah, like the guy in the bathroom.
Yeah.
He just sliced his head right off.
His head right off. Oh yeah, by the way, the entryway to the underground witch lair is in the toilets of the camp.
Right, yeah.
But oh my God, he'd either clean slice or he'd just hack away at them. I mean, when he was just chopping at Cindy in the field, that was brutal.
Also, when Alice got it like right in the chest.
Yeah.
Yeah, not great.
No.
Yeah, he did a lot of scary chopping, but that was probably my favorite one because it's like I knew it was coming, but I didn't expect them to keep showing this guy's mangled face, and I was just like, horror, yeah, this is it.
And you know, I'm not really one for the slasher films, but I felt like they knew when to like pull away, you know, from the action at a good time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Except for the bread slicer.
So what was your favorite one?
Out of the three?
Yeah.
I think I'd probably stay in... Ooh, actually, you just got me. I'm going to say 94. No, I'm going 94.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was teetering between 94 and 78. But I think there's just something about the Dina. I really love Dina as a main character.
I'm going to go with the same one, even though when I think back on it, I really enjoyed 78. But I think with like kind of a new cast and like kind of telling this new story, it felt like a sputter to me in like the through line for the story, even though it made sense and it connected to it. We needed to see it. It just felt very like, okay, pause for a second. Here's this whole new cast of characters, even though they kind of come back. But it was like, I very much enjoyed it. I kind of wish like the second trilogy or whatever they're going to do was that.
Was the
like
70s.
Right.
Yeah.
We kind of got like more with the, you know, that cast of characters because I really cared about the first one. So, but yeah, I want to say 94. It was just nonstop, gruesome, people getting murdered in hospitals, boyfriends getting chopped. And it was really good. I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
So I want to say the first one. Let us know. Comment below.
Yeah.
AKA comment anywhere on social media.
Right. When we say that, just anywhere.
Yeah. And let us know what your favorite death was, what the grossest death was, and which one was your favorite.
Please do.
All right. This season, we're changing things way up. This is a mini season. We're only going to have like one episode. No, I'm just kidding. It's not a normal season that we're doing. So I'm going to be doing the special segment this time.
I'm having flashbacks to our Mandalorian season when we would go one on, one off.
Yeah, I didn't like it.
He said all or nothing.
I mean, I like you doing them, to be honest. But this one, I was just like, yeah, fine. I'll do some movie snack facts.
I'm so excited. Snack facts.
Yum, yum. It's time for a tasty and refreshing snack.
All right. So I'm going to be talking about snack facts that have to do like in the movie theater, history of them, whatever, and like just funny things that I found throughout my research. I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning with snacks in movie theaters, back to the 1920s.
Whoa.
So as some of the earliest films began to start showing in the 1920s, when, you know, cameras and projections were able to start being had, cinema houses had a common policy. No food was allowed.
What?
On the premises or inside the theaters.
That's like one of the best things about going to the movies.
I know. Just imagine going into a movie and they're like, you literally can't bring anything. Just yourself and your hot breath watching that movie.
Funking up the theaters.
Yeah. So movie theater managers back then were much more highbrow and saw them on the same level as like the live theaters that were happening that
like
were still
Broadway.
Exactly. Or just like Shakespearean plays that were happening. So smacking and slurping was not to be had. It was very distasteful. You have to remember that these movies had no sound.
Oh, so that's all you would hear.
Right. So imagine, you know, those quiet parts in the movies. Like imagine watching The Quiet Place and everybody at the same time just like eating something and drinking something.
Oh, yeah.
So it makes a little more sense. Like
Sure.
it might sound a little jarring to be like, I can't eat my hot dog while I watch Avengers?
What about my nachos?
Exactly. But it was like, okay, I kind of like that experience.
Yeah.
Makes a little more sense. But worse, popcorn and other snacks would inevitably spill and ruin their ornate carpet floors. So that's also why they wanted no chocolates, no popcorn, no drinks in there.
I mean, have you ever been to a real gross theater and the rugs are sticky and just wet?
Just put your feet up on the seat in front of you.
Oh, no. It's awful.
But when silent films gave way to talkies, because that's what they were called, a steady sound helped to muffle the chewing. So many theaters began to lift the restrictions of that. So thanks to movies actually having sound, we can now smack and chew and leave theaters a complete mess because people are nasty.
True story.
Yep. So that's the origin of allowing snacks in a movie theater.
I love that snack fact.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I feel enlightened.
All right. Watch out for the next episode. We're going to be releasing these. Who knows when?
Sporadically.
Movies are coming out, so we're going to be covering movies that are coming out. You'll be able to guess which ones we're going to be doing, so just keep an eye on the feed.
Stay with us on this journey, folks. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to A Bite of, artwork and editing by our own Noah. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Instagram at A Bite of Pod and on Facebook at A Bite of. If you have questions, recommendations, or just want to say hi, you can email us at abiteofpod@gmail.com. You can find us on all podcast platforms. Please be sure to rate and review to spread the word. Hope you join us next time on A Bite of. Bye.